warm good morning to everyone. On behalf of the High Court of Odisha and all my esteemed colleagues, I heartily welcome Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud,
ମୁଁ କହିଲି ଭାଇ ଚିଫ୍ ଜଷ୍ଟିସ୍ ଆସିଛନ୍ତି ଯଦି ହେବ
who is
ରେକର୍ଡ଼
the prime
ନେଇଯିବେ ଆଉ
mover of this national conference.
ମୁଁ କହିଲି ଯଦି କ'ଣ ଲାଇନ୍ ଆସିଲା
that
ଚିଫ୍
Justice
ଜଷ୍ଟିସ୍
Chandrachud
କହିଲା ବେଳକୁ ରେକର୍ଡ଼ଟା
Is
ନେଇଯିବେ
a busy person is the grossest understatement.
ହଉ ହଉ ହଉ
He
ଦରକାର
has
ହେଲେ କହିଦେବ
managed to,
କାଟିଲା
I would say, squeeze in time for us to be with us on this very, very momentous occasion at the national conference, where we will be discussing what the future holds for us as a judiciary, and in particular how we are going to implement the National Action Plan in the third phase. I'm also honored to welcome Justice Rajesh Mittal, Judge Supreme Court of India, who brings with himself very vast experience being in several high courts, beginning with the Punjab and Haryana High Court, the Jammu and Kashmir High Court, then in Calcutta as the acting Chief Justice and in Allahabad as the Chief Justice. And he's been very involved even in the Punjab and Haryana High Court in the ICT initiatives of that court. In fact, we had the privilege of being together in a committee where we examined electronic evidence and how it should be preserved, retrieved. I'm also privileged to honor and privileged and honored to welcome in our midst a galaxy of judges, Chief Justice Sanghi leading the band, Justice Vipin Sanghi, Chief Justice Uttarakhand High Court, Justice Rajiv Shagdar, Judge Delhi High Court, Justice Chakradhari Shraddha Singh, Judge Patna High Court, Justice Arun Bhansali, Rajasthan High Court, Justice Naveen Rao, Telangana High Court, Justice Anjali Kumar Mishra, Allahabad High Court, Justice Sam Koshi, Chhattisgarh, Justice Devanshu Bashar, Calcutta, Justice Kulkarni, Bombay High Court, Justice Mushtaq, Kerala High Court, Justice Tarlok Singh Chauhan, Himachal, Justice Lisa Gill, Punjab and Haryana High Court, Justice Suman Shah, Guwahati High Court, Justice Raja Vijayaragan, Kerala High Court, Justice Sandeep Sharma, Himachal High Court, Justice Rajesh Shankar, Jharkhand High Court, Justice M. Sundar, Madras High Court, Justice Madhuresh Prasad, Patna High Court, Justice Sanjeev Kumar, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh High Court, Justice Moshmi Bhattacharya, Calcutta High Court, Justice Lod, Tripura High Court, Justice Park Pratim Sahu, Chhattisgarh High Court, Justice Arun Munga, Punjab and Haryana High Court, Justice Ravindra Maithani, Uttarakhand High Court, Justice Vishal Dhagat, Madhya Pradesh High Court, Justice Vishal Mishra, also of Madhya Pradesh High Court, Justice Vinod Kumar, Telangana High Court, Justice Suraj Govindraj, Karnataka High Court, Justice Saumitra Saikya, Guwahati High Court, Justice Raghunandan Rao, Andhra Pradesh High Court, Justice Rajneesh Oswal, Jammu and Kashmir High Court, Justice Nikhil Kariel, Gujarat High Court, Justice Purushendra Kumar Gaurav, Judge Delhi High Court, Justice Bharata Chakravarti, Judge Madras High Court, Justice Aniruddha Mayi, Gujarat High Court, Justice Vikram Chauhan, Allahabad High Court, Justice Chakravarti, Andhra Pradesh High Court, Justice Shivashankar Gowda, Karnataka High Court, Justice Milan Sate, Bombay High Court, Dr. Justice Nupur Bhati, Rajasthan High Court, and Shri Justice Guneshwar Sharma, Manipur High Court. We are also honored by the presence of Shri Ashok Parija, Advocate General Odisha. We welcome Shri S.K.G. Rahate, Secretary to the Government of India, Department of Justice and Ministry of Law and Justice. We are thankful to him for sparing time to be with us and also to make a presentation in the first session. We welcome Mr. Atul Kurekar, Secretary General, Supreme Court of India, Shri Pravash Prashul Pandey, Joint Secretary, Department of Justice, Shri Ashok Kumar, Department of Justice, Director, and the E-Committee. We have Ms. Salina Nair, Member Processes, Dr. Parvinder Singh Arora, Member Project Management, Shri Ashish Shirodamkar, Member Systems, Arun Mohi Shelvi, Member Human Resources. We also have Mr. Rajiv Sharma and Ms. Anju Arora from the Chief Justice of India's Secretariat. My colleagues and I also welcome the 30 district judges of Odisha and one nodal officer from each of the 30 districts of Odisha who are present here at a special request to attend the conference and gain from its deliberations. My colleagues and I welcome all the CPCs from the various high courts who are the backroom boys who script and dialogue all that we have to say at the national conference, the presentations we are going to make here in the next 2 days. We welcome Shri Sunil Bansal, the Director General of Police, Odisha, Shri S the Commissioner of Police, Dr. Chayani, the Collector, Cuttack. As far as my recollection goes, the last national conference of the IT committees was held in Lucknow more than 6 years ago. The changes witnessed in the judiciary as a result of several ICT initiatives received a great fillip with the COVID-19 pandemic. Virtual hearings, live streaming, e-filing, paperless courts, digitization of court records are now no longer new initiatives. They have been launched at various stages in varying degrees across the high courts and even in some of the district courts in the states with a reasonable degree of success. No doubt it's a work in progress, but with the union government being most liberal in its financial support to the phase 3 of the e-courts project, the transformation would expectedly be complete in the near future. How we should go about the exercise of completing the task is one of the key points for discussion in this national conference. We are here to share our experiences, our achievements and best practices, our plans, and the challenges that we face in the various high courts in the implementation of such plans. It is expected that we also share the problems and challenges we face and what we do to overcome them. This is important because it is by now evident that the support of the state governments to the various high courts for the e-initiatives is not consistent across the board. Here I must acknowledge that the government of Orissa has been extremely supportive of the initiatives of our high court. We look forward to the sessions where, apart from the high courts making their presentations, we will also benefit from the insights of the E-Committee, the Ministry of Law and Justice, the NIC, experts like Dr. Dinesh Kadre and Dr. Vivek Raghavan. I would not dwell too much on what we should deliberate upon, except to flag a few issues that I think we should keep in mind. The first is data integrity and security. Even while we wait a comprehensive data protection law to be enacted, we must put our heads together, of course with the help of experts, to frame a comprehensive judicial data security policy, particularly since we are generating vast amounts of data on a daily and maybe even an hourly basis, and particularly since much of this data concerns the litigants in our courts and their most private and confidential details of their lives. It is important that while maintaining the integrity and security of the data and storing it on media that we control, we decide who can use it and how. For instance, we've had live streaming of several of the high courts in the country, and many of us have noticed in the YouTube clips of those live streamings being used by various actors, many of them private players, and with captions like "angry judge" and "wonderful arguments" and so on. But we must learn to control the use of such clips by users of the internet. And likewise, Gmail. Many of us still continue to use Gmail, which is a private service provider. So these are clearly matters of concern that we need to address. Much of it has been set out in the action plan. We must get down to the nuts and bolts of it. Also, Jeffrey Hinton, who last week resigned as Vice President of Google, has cautioned us about the uses of artificial intelligence. Even as we use it for our work of translation of judgments into regional languages, we may perhaps have to undertake a robust and intensive consultation with experts before we think of deploying AI for other purposes. I know there is already a committee set up by the Chief Justice of India for this purpose. The second issue is how we become self-reliant as an institution as far as the deployment of ITC for our work is concerned. We are far too dependent on external agencies for both our hardware and software, which can soon get and is in fact getting outdated at an alarming rate. I must acknowledge here that the services rendered to the judiciary for the last 2 decades and more by the National Informatics Center. But I would think that this is the time where we should think of constituting our own resource in this area. Concerns of redundancy and interoperability and continuity in preservation, use and retrieval of data, all of this needs to be addressed. I mentioned a committee of which Justice Bindal was the chair, and 2 of my colleagues in the High Court and 1 of his colleagues in the Punjab and Haryana High Court. We submitted a report in 2018 on electronic evidence, storage, use, retrieval and preservation and authenticating of electronic evidence, that is some report that will need to be examined in some depth by both the Ministry of Law and Justice and us. How can we build our core competencies in the area? How can we be more self-reliant as far as the internet connectivity and bandwidth availability across the country is concerned? Friends from the Northeast have pointed out how the internet connectivity is not uniform across the Northeast, and this needs to be addressed. Then the issue of training. I am hoping that in these 2 days, we also do some backroom chatting so that we can share our experiences of training of judicial officers, lawyers, law clerks, and court staff. If the mission of transformation of the judiciary through ICT initiatives has to take place at a uniform rate, then some of these training modules need to be standardized. It has been 18 years since the first National Action Plan was rolled out by the E-Committee. The IT committees in the various high courts, as well as the E-Committee in the Supreme Court of India, has been very fortunate in the past 2 decades to have had judges with exceptional competence and vision whose unstinting efforts have brought us this far. We need to build on those efforts and then pass on the baton to the next generation of judges. A conference like this will go a long way in setting those goals. As our Chief Justice of India never tires of reminding us, all these measures ultimately must deliver better quality justice to the litigants and make the courts more accessible and user-friendly for everyone. It must make them more accountable and transparent in their functioning. It must lead us to delivering better on the progress towards equal and fair justice. While adding to Gandhiji's talisman, we would do well in the context of ICT initiatives to align them with our core constitutional values and beliefs, including the right to privacy, so well articulated by the Supreme Court of India in the Puttaswamy judgment. I wish this conference all success. I hope my dedicated team of officers led by the Registrar General of the High Court of Odisha, the registrars and other officials, and the huge army of staff have been able to cater to all your comforts. If there are any shortcomings, the responsibility lies with me. You will kindly excuse us for that. Thank you and Jai Hind.